Hello everyone and welcome to All Things Watched. I am super excited to be here today talking to you folks about this awesome TV series, which I think is probably undoubtedly one of the greatest things that Marvel has ever done, period, which is the recreation or readaptation or revival of one of the greatest all-time animes ever, which was of course the 1992 X-Men animated series. Now of course this title was called X-Men 97 because I believe it was actually, the show ran for 5 years and it ended in 1997. I was actually someone who did grow up with this movie. I was actually born literally 1990, so by the time I was like 5 or 6 years old, the show was pretty well coming to a conclusion, but I was able to see all the reruns and I got to watch the whole series. So being now in my 30s, having being 34 now and able to experience the X-Men animated series the same way that I was able to experience it as a little child, it's just mind-blowing, and I just loved it. I think that this was, as I already said, one of the greatest TV series that Marvel has done in a very long time. From everything from the action sequence to seeing the X-Men actually work together, seeing them utilize their powers in a way that we have never actually seen. We got some crazy, amazing adaptations from the comic, like the Antimadium, what's it called? Animadium, or whatever that metal is called in the MCU. Before Marvel reattained the Fox universe or the X-Men universe, they called it Vibranium. So I guess technically Vibranium still exists in the MCU, but technically adamantium, I think is actually what it was, is the metal technically that's inside of Wolverine. And we actually got to see that play out here in the finale of X-Men 97 when Magneto just takes his powers and he just like, and he just rips the animadium, I can't even say it now, I keep forgetting it, I'm not good with words, but he rips it literally out of Wolverine's body, which is literally the exact comic panel. When they did that still at the end of episode 9, that still was an actual straight out of the comics adaptation. That is exactly how it looks in the comics, and it was so great because it was bloody and it was horrific, but it wasn't to the point where it had to be like a rated R. Like children could still watch it because they didn't have blood just gushing out of him. It was just, a still of him bleeding and the animatium or whatever it's called coming out of him. I don't know why I can't say that word right now. Maybe I'm having a moment. But either way, you get what I'm saying. We got to see the Dark Phoenix. We got to see some amazing cameos. And I have to be honest with you, I want to talk about the cameos here for a second, especially in the finale, because they've been teasing cameos throughout the series. And I think that they were very smart by using Morph as that sort of way of getting your cameos, because it was a great way to incorporate cameos without actually taking away from the story, which is something that I really appreciated even in the finale, is we got all these amazing cameos. We got Iron Man, we got Captain America, Black Panther, Cloak and Dagger, Daredevil. Who else do we have? We had the other X-Men group with Psylocke, and we had Silver Samurai. We had Peter Parker and Mary Jane, which also raises a lot of questions from the Spider-Man 98. I did see a rumor floating around that Marvel was contemplating on bringing back the 98 Spider-Man series, and I absolutely hope they do, because they do say technically that Spider-Man Ultimate or Unlimited, whatever it was, is technically a sequel to that one. But let's be honest, Spider-Man Unlimited was not as good as the Spider-Man 98 animated series. But what you can say is that we also got to see Morph, turn into Reed Richards. Earlier in previous episodes, we've seen Morph turn into the Hulk. We've seen him turn into all these amazing different cameos. But like I said, they gave us the cameos without taking away from the story. Because if you're going to have cameos, you have to do it in two ways. Either A, make the cameos actually mean something where they're actually a part of the story, kind of like what happened in Spider-Man No Way Home. They brought in the 3 Peter Parkers, but they're all vitals to the story. They all played a hand in trying to overcome, this greater threat of the, I guess you could say, the uncategorized Sinister Six. I say uncategorized because they weren't really technically the Sinister Six. They weren't even really all the same characters as Sinister Six, but you get what I'm saying. It was kind of like a knockoff of Sinister Six. So you had these 3 Peter Parkers working together, but in that way, those cameos actually meant something to the story. They brought their own wisdoms. They played a little bit almost. They were very playful with each other. They were sort of both Tom Holland and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man were kind of picking at Tobey Maguire. So like, wow, that webbing comes out of your actually comes out of your body. Like, you know, does it come out of anywhere else? And they were sort of this playful, joking, but also very serious, scientific. Had these little scientific banters and whatnot. Whereas here in X-Men '97. The cameos didn't really mean a whole lot, except when Morph did it, because he was actually, he actually used like the Hulk's ability and Mr. Fantastic's ability, and he actually used the abilities of whoever it was that he turned into. But in terms of the other cameos, like the ones that we just see, they were still very meaningful in the sense that they didn't take away from the story. Because I did see a couple people online talk about how they wish that we could have gotten a little bit more of Spider-Man. But I don't think that, I think Marvel did the right thing by not giving us too much of Spider-Man, because then it would just take away from the X-Men. This is an X-Men story, but they did a really good job at reminding us that all these other animated series exist from the 90s, and they're all in this same world. Now, given the fact that we did see so many cameos like Spider-Man and all the other ones that we just named, even Cloak and Dagger, I don't remember Cloak and Dagger being in any of the old 90s series. That makes me think that they are going to sort of set up like an Avengers type, sort of like a multiversal, animated multiversal group of superheroes. So I have no doubts in my mind that we are going to get a Spider-Man, we are going to get most likely another Fantastic Four, and even if we don't get them, you can now say all those 90s series are canon because of the cameos. So they're all canon now. All those animated series, they are now a part of this X-Men 97 world, or a part of this, you know, in my opinion, I think X-Men 97 is a part of the MCU, even though it might not be actually categorized like that, because we are in a multiverse. The multiverse, there has to be one world that's animated, that's cartoonish, and has all these characters. So to me, this is very much a multiversal project, and does absolutely tie into the greater MCU in the sense that it's just a different universe that's animated. You know, we've seen Doctor Strange go through the animated series. We see in Loki has an actual Miss Minutes. She's actually animated. So that's like a combination of real live action and animation. I'm pretty sure even back in the original Deadpool movie, I think even in Deadpool they actually had this sort of little bit of an animation. But either way, you get what I'm saying. In the grandiose of the multiverse, X-Men 97 absolutely is canon, and because of all these cameos in the finale, all the 90s animated series for the most part now are canon as well. The only references that I didn't see really from any of these cameos was the 1999, I think it was, 1999 Avengers United We Stand. So that's okay, because that series wasn't really that great anyways, but all the other series were fantastic. If you ask me, I like them all really. The Incredible Hulk, all the old 90s series, they're all great. Even the Avengers one I liked. I just didn't think it was as strong as like X-Men or Spider-Man or any of these other ones. But I have no doubts in my mind Spider-Man is coming. So in terms of X-Men 97, I thought the writing was phenomenal, how they utilized the X-Men, and it was really nice to see them give us a break from Wolverine. Wolverine is probably one of my favorite all-time characters in general. Not just X-Men, but in general. But I will be honest with you, when we look at the X-Men movies, even, even a little bit sometimes in the original series, the animated series back in the 90s, sometimes they really focus on Wolverine, but even in the old animated series, Wolverine was never really like the main focus, but he probably had a bigger role than what he did here. But I do think that Wolverine will get a bigger role in season 2, maybe even season 3, but I like the fact that Cyclops was the leader here. He was like the main focus, and then everybody had their little moments. Jubilee, man, what a boss in that final episode when she's fighting Sebastian, crazy. And then of course we get to the really crazy scene, which was the very ending when we get the post-credit scene. We know what they're setting up. I don't want to ruin it for you, for anybody that might not know the comics or might not even be familiar with the live action. I don't want to tell you too much. All I'll say is that the villain will be Apocalypse, but it seems to me like they're pulling from a couple of different timelines, because we had most of the X-Men go back in time, 3000 BC, but then we had Scott and Jean go to the future, and I think that they're actually pulling from a couple different comic sources, but ultimately they're going to really, I think they're going to heavily rely on the Apocalypse story from the comics, but I also think they're going to be combining another a story from the comic, but it's a more grounded, it's a smaller story, not one that everybody might know about, and that's all I'm going to say, because I don't want to ruin it, because it is a smaller story, but it has a massive impact. And so if they combine these two different tales, depending on which interpretation of Apocalypse they go, because there's tons of different Apocalypse versions or interpretations, whatever you want to call it, I feel like it's going to be very heavily time-based, kind of like a Days of Future Past, but not quite not the actual Days of Future Past timeline, but in the sense of how in Days of Future Past they're all over the place in the timeline. That element of Days of Future Past will be here, but it's not actually going to be a Days of Future Past story. I'm also very curious to see how they're going to handle Apocalypse in his young form, and not, you know, just him being older and already being Apocalypse. And then we get to the present day. They do tease Gambit. I can promise you Gambit is coming back. Apocalypse is holding his card, the Queen card, and he actually refers to death. For anyone that doesn't know, Apocalypse does eventually recruit Gambit, and he will become one of the 4 horsemen, so it's a great way to bring him back to satisfy the fans. Even though I do sort of like the idea that they did kill off Gambit, not because I don't like him. Gambit, once again, is one of my favorite X-Men, not one of my favorite characters as a whole, but one of my favorite X-Men characters, and I really think that by them killing him, it showed the stakes. It shows that in animation, they're willing to kill off main characters. It also brought a gravity to Sebastian that, you know, we didn't really have in any interpretation. One of the biggest problems that we have with all these different Marvel movies is that there's never really any real stakes. We know the villain's going to die, the hero's going to live, and the villain is just going to be like a knockoff. Nobody cares. You know, we're going to forget about the villain. There's only a handful of villains in the MCU that was actually impactful, and Loki is one of them. And he's more of an anti-hero now. He's not even really a villain. And so when you have Sebastian come in and take out one of the core members from the original series, Gambit, it's just like, wow, this show is not messing around. They're not afraid to kill anybody. Even in the finale, I was thinking to myself, man, are they going to kill off Scott? Are they going to kill off Jubilee? Are they going to kill off Nightcrawler? Those were the 3 that were kind of up there for me. I was thinking maybe they could actually not survive this finale. But either way, love this series, loved the writing, loved everything about it. Can't wait to see season 2, and I am ecstatic. This was the greatest thing that we've seen from Marvel probably since the 90s, really, in terms of their animation, and honestly even in terms of a lot of their live action stuff, especially after Endgame. The writing phenomenal, directing phenomenal, acting phenomenal, and the action sequences were all phenomenal. So with that being said, folks, that's my review of X-Men 97. Let me know in the comment section below if you've seen it, and if you'd like to tell me why or why not. If you like this video, click that subscribe button, and until the next one, take care.